The morning I watched my mother die, she was standing 3 feet away from me, sipping chamomile tea. Marina, honey, can you believe this humidity? Mom. Celine Foster wiped her glass with her napkin. At 63, she looked healthier than she had in years. 3 months of rest at Martha's Vineyard had erased the tremor in her hands and brought color back to her face. My phone lit up. Bennett's name. My older brother. We hadn't spoken in 3 months, complete radio silence since I'd discovered what he'd done. I answered but didn't speak. Marina. His voice cracked. Marina, are you there? Silence. It's Mom. A gasping breath. Oh God, Marina. Mom is gone. I looked at my mother doing Tai Chi on the patio, perfectly balanced and very much alive. What are you talking about, Bennett? Heart attack. Last night at Oak Haven. He was crying now. The nurse called at 3 a.m. They tried to save her, but she's gone. Oak Haven. The facility where Bennett had dumped Mom 6 months ago with a forged dementia diagnosis while I was working in London, where they'd kept her sedated until I broke her out 4 months ago. Where is she now? I need to see the body. You can't. Infectious disease protocol, they cremated her immediately. I almost laughed. Mom was terrified of fire. She'd never choose cremation. I pressed speaker and turned up the volume. Mom stopped mid-pose, walking toward me. I signaled for silence. So, Mom died last night and was cremated this morning. I was in shock, Marina. His tone shifted to irritation. Look, I'm handling everything. The funeral's Friday at Ebenezer Baptist. But honestly, you don't need to come. Mom's eyes went wide. She stepped closer, gripping her towel. Why shouldn't I come? She's my mother, too. Because she didn't want you there. Venom now. In her final moments, she asked for me. For Kyle. She didn't mention you. And she left everything to me, the house, all her assets. She said you have your fancy job and don't need anything from us. Mom's face crumbled. Not with sadness, with rage. Her son was erasing her to steal her house. She straightened her spine and nodded at me. Permission. Okay, Bennett, I said, letting my voice tremble. If that's what Mom wanted, maybe I don't deserve to be there. Exactly. Relief flooded his voice. I'll send you the memorial livestream link. Don't come to Atlanta, it'll just cause drama. The line went dead. Mom sat down across from me, hands flat on the table. He said I was dead. He thinks you're still in Oak Haven, I replied. If I hadn't gotten you out, you might actually be dead. I remembered that night, Mom in a wheelchair, eyes unfocused from sedatives. Bennett had ordered them to keep her heavily medicated. He's going to sell the house, Mom said. 3 generations, Marina. He's not selling it, I said, grabbing my iPad, because he doesn't own it. I'm going to the funeral. I smiled, the cold smile I get before demolishing white-collar criminals. We're definitely going, but not as mourners, Kim. I called Harrison Webb, our family lawyer. Marina, it's 6 a.m. Book the jet. Bennett just declared Mom dead and claimed her entire estate. Typing sounds. That's massive fraud. I know. He's holding a funeral Friday. I need you to pull everything, his credit cards, Kyle's business loans, Oak Haven records. Find out who signed the death certificate. Consider it done. Be careful, Marina. I'm not afraid of him, Harrison. He's playing checkers. I've been playing chess since I was 12. I hung up and checked my calendar. Tuesday. Funeral Friday. 72 hours to build my case. 6 hours later. My home office looked like mission control. 6 monitors displayed different slices of Bennett's digital life. I'd been working for 6 straight hours, fueled by cold brew and rage. First, Bennett's Instagram. He was live streaming from Mom's bedroom wearing a black veil. Thank you for all the prayers, he whispered. This is the hardest day of my life. We weren't prepared for the costs, cremation, memorial service, legal fees. If you can help us give Mama Celine the send-off she deserves, the link is in my bio. Perfect tears. Perfect makeup. I clicked the link. GoFundMe. Rest in peace, Celine Foster. Goal, $50,000. Current, $18. $347. Comments from church members. Mom's piano students' neighbors who'd loved her for decades. Real grief. Real generosity. And Bennett was stealing it. I launched my forensic software and traced the payment infrastructure. 3 minutes later, I had the routing number. The GoFundMe wasn't connected to a funeral fund. It was linked directly to Bennett's Neiman Marcus credit card. He was using sympathy donations to pay off designer handbag debt. I took screenshots of everything and texted Harrison, "Found it." GoFundMe goes to personal credit card. 18K raised. Federal wire fraud. His response, "Jesus, do not confront him. Let him keep digging." Oh, I wouldn't stop him. I'd watch him bury himself. My second monitor showed security camera footage from the brownstone. I'd installed them 2 years ago when Mom mentioned missing lawn decorations. She'd thought it was kids. I'd suspected Bennett. A moving truck was backing into the driveway. Kyle Brennan stood on the porch with a clipboard looking like he was supervising a yard sale. I watched movers haul out the mahogany dining table the 1920s antique Mom polished every Sunday, telling us stories about our great-grandmother who'd saved 5 years to buy it. Kyle was selling it like firewood. My hand moved toward my phone to call police, but I stopped. Bennett had power of attorney forged but legal on paper. I couldn't blow my cover yet. Let them think they'd won. I pulled up financial records. Bennett and Kyle's joint account showed a deposit 6 months ago, $450,000, a reverse mortgage on the brownstone, signed by Celine Foster with Bennett as POA. The occupancy clause was clear. If the borrower didn't live there for 6 consecutive months, the full balance was due immediately. Mom had been gone exactly 6 months and 3 days, but the $450,000 didn't stay in their account. Within 48 hours, it vanished wire transferred to Pinnacle Development LLC, a Nevada shell company. I cracked my knuckles. Time to follow the money. Using proprietary databases from my cybersecurity work, I traced Pinnacle Development through layers of corporate registrations. It led to another shell company, Atlantic Ventures Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands. The Caymans, where money goes to hide. I pulled transaction records. Atlantic Ventures was making regular payments to various individuals, $50,000 here, $30,000 there. I ran background checks on the recipients: a dentist in Atlanta suburbs, a retired teacher in Florida, a small business owner in Texas. I checked their social media. The dentist had posted 6 months ago, "Brennan Investment Group is a scam. I want my retirement money back." The teacher, "Kyle Brennan stole everything I had. Don't trust him." My breath caught. Kyle wasn't just a thief. He was running a Ponzi scheme, taking money from new investors to pay off old ones, demanding returns. The $450,000 from Mom's house from 3 generations of our family history hadn't gone into savings. It had evaporated, used to cover Kyle's fraud and keep angry investors from going to the police. They hadn't just stolen from us. They'd used our mother's legacy to cover up crimes against dozens of innocent people. But I needed proof Kyle personally authorized the transfer. He could claim Bennett did it or that his account was hacked. I pulled up the wire transfer metadata. Every digital transaction leaves fingerprints timestamp device type IP address. The transfer was authorized October 15th, soon 47 p.m. from a MacBook Pro. The IP address, 192.168.1, 105 local network, but below that was the external public IP. I ran a geolocation trace. The blue dot zoomed across my screen. North America, Georgia, Atlanta, West End District, 422 Abernathy Street, Mom's house. Kyle had been sitting in my mother's living room using her Wi-Fi when he wired her home equity to the Cayman Islands. He was so arrogant, so sure Mom would never come home, that he didn't even bother hiding his digital tracks. I took screenshots, printed them. This single piece of paper proved Kyle was physically present when the funds were stolen. Interstate wire fraud, money laundering, RICO charges. I wasn't just looking at theft anymore. I was looking at federal prison time. I texted Harrison, "Call your FBI contact. I just found where $450K went Ponzi scheme through Caymans. Have Kyle's IP address from the wire transfer. He did it from Mom's house." My phone rang immediately. "Don't move," Harrison said. "I'm coming over. Print everything." I hung up and stared at the monitors glowing in the dark office. Bennett thought he could outsmart a senile old woman and her absent daughter. He'd forgotten one thing: numbers never lie. And neither do I, sir. Thursday morning, Atlanta. The humidity hit me like a wet blanket the moment I stepped off the private jet at Hartsfield Jackson. I'd left Mom safe at a boutique hotel in Buckhead, registered under a false name, with strict instructions: don't open the door for anyone. Now I sat in a rental sedan 3 houses down from 422 Abernathy Street, watching my childhood home through tinted windows. The brownstone looked different. The garden Mom tended every weekend was overgrown. Her roses were dead. 6 months of neglect had aged the place a decade. But it was the wooden sign on the lawn that made my blood run cold, thale pending. Mom had been legally dead for less than 48 hours, and the house was already under contract. Impossible, unless the deal had been done weeks ago. A white van pulled into the driveway. Not a professional moving company, just 2 guys in stained shirts throwing furniture into the back like garbage. Kyle emerged from the house holding a clipboard, snapping his fingers at the movers. He wore pressed khakis and a polo shirt, looking more annoyed than grieving. I watched them haul out the mahogany table. Mom's table. The one she'd told us stories about every Sunday, how great-grandma had saved for 5 years working as a seamstress to buy it. Kyle was selling family history like firewood. My hand moved to my phone, but I stopped myself. Not yet. I needed them confident, comfortable, convinced they'd won. I pulled up Instagram. Bennett had posted a new story, saying goodbye to childhood memories today. Mom would want her things to bring joy to others. #grief journey. The comments were full of sympathy. People offering prayers, condolences, money. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Harrison with a message. They're liquidating assets before the funeral. Moving fast. His response came immediately. That's consciousness of guilt. Don't interfere. Let them hang themselves. I drove downtown to a dimly lit jazz cafe on Edgewood Avenue, the kind of place where business was conducted in back booths away from prying eyes. Jackson Reed sat in the corner nursing black coffee. He was an ex-cop turned private investigator I'd worked with on corporate fraud cases. He didn't smile when I sat down. "You're not going to like this, Marina." He slid a manila envelope across the table. "Tell me." I went to Oakhaven, talked to the night nurse, Patricia Reynolds. $50 and a promise of anonymity loosened her tongue. He tapped the envelope. "She confirmed Bennett authorized your mother's transfer to the palliative care wing 6 months ago. But that's not the worst part." I pulled out the top document, a Do Not Resuscitate Order, DNR, dated 4 months ago, just days before I'd rescued Mom. The signature at the bottom read Estelle Foster in shaky blue ink. "Look closer," Jackson said. I'd analyzed thousands of signatures in fraud investigations. This one was wrong. The loop on the S was too wide. The slant was too sharp. The pressure points were inconsistent. Someone had traced over a real signature, but pressed too hard in the wrong places. "It's a forgery," I said quietly. "A bad one." Jackson agreed. "But good enough for Oakhaven's administration. Marina Bennett didn't just warehouse your mother. He set it up so if she so much as caught a cold, the doctors would stand back and let her die." I flipped through the rest of the file. Photos of Kyle meeting the facility director in the parking lot. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals from Mom's pension that matched those meeting dates. They'd been bleeding her dry while waiting for her to die. "Does anyone else know about this?" I asked. "Just us." I put the documents back. "This changes everything. I thought this was just greed, but they tried to kill her. Technically, since she's alive, it's attempted murder, conspiracy, medical fraud." Jackson leaned forward. "You walk into a police station right now, they're arrested by dinner." "No." I shook my head. "If I arrest them now, they'll get bail. They'll hire lawyers. They'll spin a story about doing what's best for a sick old woman. I need to destroy their credibility first." Jackson smirked. "You have a plan for tomorrow's funeral." "Bennett wants a show. He wants to be the grieving son in the spotlight." I stood up, smoothing my blazer. "I'm going to give him the performance of a lifetime." Friday morning, Ebenezer Baptist Church. I arrived early. Baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses hiding my face. The church parking lot was already filling with expensive cars, Atlanta's black elite coming to pay respects. Bennett stood at the top of the stone steps greeting mourners like a celebrity at a premiere. He wore a $3,000 black suit I'd seen the charge on Mom's stolen credit card. Kyle stood beside him shaking hands with practiced solemnity. I watched from my car as the congregation filtered inside. These were Mom's people. Church members who'd known her for 40 years. Former students whose kids she'd taught piano. Neighbors who'd borrowed sugar and shared gossip over her fence. They thought they were mourning. They had no idea they were extras in a crime scene. I pulled out a special pen from my bag. It looked ordinary standard black ballpoint, but the ink was thermal reactive, designed to fade completely after 60 minutes of air exposure. A tool I used for temporary evidence marking. Time to make an entrance. The moment I stepped out of my car, the chatter stopped. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. I walked toward the church steps, heels clicking on concrete. Bennett spotted me halfway up. His posture stiffened. He said something to Kyle, who immediately crossed his arms and moved to block my path. But Bennett was faster. He rushed down 3 steps to meet me, positioning himself physically above me. "You have some nerve showing up here," he hissed, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "I just want to pay my respects, Bennett." "Respects?" He laughed, harsh and jagged. "You didn't respect her when she was alive. You left her to rot in that nursing home while you were too busy with your fancy tech job, and now you want to play the grieving daughter." The crowd murmured agreement. Bennett had done his work well. I was the villain, the heartless career woman who'd abandoned her sick mother. "Please," I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear. "I just want to see her one last time." Bennett pulled a folded paper from Kyle's pocket. "You want inside. You want to sit in the front row and pretend you cared. Fine, but sign this first." He thrust the paper at me. A legal waiver stating that I, Marina Foster, voluntarily waived all rights to contest the estate distribution and acknowledged Bennett Foster as sole beneficiary. Blackmail. Sign away my inheritance or be barred from my mother's funeral. "Sign it," Bennett demanded. "Sign it and you can go in. Don't sign it and Kyle will have security remove you." I looked at the paper, then at the crowd. They were watching, waiting to see if I'd choose money over family. I pulled out my special pen. "Fine, give it here." Kyle held the clipboard, steady eyes gleaming with greed. I uncapped my pen and pressed it to paper, writing in clear cursive, "Marina Foster." "There," I said, handing it back. "Are you happy?" Bennett snatched the clipboard, staring at my signature with a triumphant smirk. "Smart choice. Now get inside, sit down, and don't say a word." I walked through the heavy oak doors into the sanctuary. Cool air lilies, old hymnals. At the front, surrounded by white roses, sat a golden urn on a velvet pedestal. I walked down the center aisle and sat in the front row directly in front of the urn. I stared at it, wondering what was actually inside. Fireplace ash, playground sand. I checked my watch. 55 minutes until the ink faded. The pews filled behind me. Bennett and Kyle made their grand entrance, Bennett throwing himself onto the bench beside me, making a show of being too weak to stand. "She's in a better place now," Kyle whispered loud enough for those behind us to hear. I looked at my watch again. 50 minutes. The service was about to begin. And so was the resurrection. Bennett stood at the pulpit, gripping the sides with manicured hands. A single perfect tear rolled down his cheek. "My mother was a saint," he whispered into the microphone. In her final moments, when the pain was too much, she held my hand. She said, "Bennett, promise me you'll keep the family together. Promise me you'll take care of the house." She told me she wanted me to have the deed to preserve our history. Kyle stood behind him, head bowed. The congregation sniffled. Amens rippled through the pews. Bennett continued, "I know my sister Marina is here today, and I want to say before God and everyone I forgive her. I forgive her for not being there. Mom left the house to me because she knew I was the one who stayed." He stepped down. The congregation sighed with sympathy. The pastor stood. "We will now hear from the younger daughter, Marina." The temperature dropped. I stood. Every eye in the church radiated hostility, the cold sister who'd abandoned the saint. I walked to the pulpit. My heels clicked on hardwood. Click, click, click. I didn't cry. Didn't tremble. I looked down at Bennett in the front row. "Thank you, Bennett, for those moving words," I said, voice clear and steady. "It's comforting to hear about Mom's final moments. Amazing, really, because usually when someone dies of a massive heart attack, they're unconscious. But Mom was apparently lucid enough to discuss real estate law. That's a miracle." Unease rippled through the room. Bennett stiffened. "You said she was cremated this morning. You said the ashes in this urn are all that's left." I paused, letting silence stretch. "But there's a problem with your story, Bennett." I leaned into the microphone. "The problem is that the dead don't usually drink tea. They don't usually complain about Atlanta traffic. And most importantly, they don't usually stand outside church doors waiting to call their children liars." I pointed toward the massive doors. "I think you should ask her yourself." I nodded to the security team positioned at the entrance. The heavy oak doors groaned, swung open. Blinding sunlight flooded the sanctuary. A silhouette stepped forward. Not a ghost. Not a spirit. Celine Foster, alive, wearing a pristine white suit, holding a gold-handled cane. 2 security guards flanked her. For 3 seconds, absolute silence. Then chaos. "Lord have mercy!" someone screamed. A woman in the 3rd row fainted, sliding off the pew with a thud. "It's a ghost!" Mrs. Patterson shrieked, clutching her pearls. Celine didn't float. She walked down the center aisle with strong, furious strides. The crowd pressed against the pews, terrified to touch her. Bennett's face drained of color, gray, mouth opening and closing like a fish, no sound coming out. Kyle looked at the back exit, then at the guards blocking it. Calculating escape. Odds 0. Celine reached the altar, looked at the golden urn with disgust, raised her cane, knocked it off the table. The urn crashed, popped open, spilled playground sand across the red carpet. The church went silent, staring at the cheap deception. "Mama!" Bennett squeaked. "Mama, is that you?" Celine turned to him, not a loving mother's look, a judge delivering a death sentence. "Who else would it be, Bennett?" Her voice boomed without a microphone. "Did you think a bag of sand would be enough to get rid of me?" Bennett's knees gave out. He collapsed, grabbing at Celine's pant leg. "Mama, I thought you were dead. The nursing home called me. I swear." "Liar." Celine pulled away like he was a snake. "You forged the DNR. You forged the will. And for 6 months you've been praying for me to die so you could sell my house." Collective gasp. The congregation turned instantly. Sympathy evaporated, replaced by horror. "And you?" Celine pointed her cane at Kyle. "You sold my dining room table yesterday. I want it back. And I want the money you stole from my pension fund." Celine walked to the pulpit. I handed her the microphone. She looked out at shocked faces. "I apologize for the disruption, but it seems my son decided to hold my funeral a few decades early. There will be no burial today, no repast, and certainly no inheritance." She pointed the cane at Bennett, sobbing on the floor. "This show is over. But before you leave, you're going to open your phone. You're going to refund every dollar you stole from that GoFundMe right now, or I'll let Marina call the police waiting outside." The crowd erupted. Shock turned to anger. "Give us our money back. Shame on you." Bennett kicked a chair, gathering his bag, storming toward the exit. He had to pass me. "Congratulations," he spat. "You destroyed me. I hope you're happy." I stepped aside. "Actually, Bennett, we're just getting started." Detective Sarah Kowalski entered through the side door badge displayed. "Bennett Foster, Kyle Brennan, you need to come with us for questioning." Bennett's face went white. "On what charges?" I pulled out my tablet. "Elder abuse fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and money laundering. Should I go on?" I handed the detective my encrypted drive. "Digital forensics package. Everything's documented." The detective opened a laptop projecting Bennett's contingency folder onto the church screen emails with Mexican pharmacies' research on lethal insulin doses. The congregation gasped. Not just theft, attempted murder. Bennett broke. "Kyle made me do it. He needed money for his investors." "Shut up, Bennett," Kyle hissed. "Lawyer, now." They were separated, led away. Bennett rambling, blaming Kyle. Kyle silent, calculating. I watched them go. The church slowly emptied. People avoiding my eyes, ashamed they'd believed Bennett's lies. I stood with Mom in the suddenly quiet sanctuary. "Is it over?" she asked. I looked at the spilled sand, the empty urn, the abandoned waiver on the pew, my signature already fading to nothing. "Not yet, Mom. We still have a house to save." Friday afternoon, Atlanta, Marriott Conference Room. The foreclosure auction smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Investors in cheap suits filled the rows, checking phones, waiting to buy family homes for pennies on the dollar. I stood in the back wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. I wasn't here to bid. Harrison Webb would handle that. I was here to watch my brother play his final hand. Bennett entered 5 minutes before the gavel fell. He looked haggard, wrinkled clothes, unwashed hair, but his eyes burned with manic determination. He clutched a certified check, his last $400,000, his getaway fund. He sat front row, ready to fight. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Item 42, residential property 422 Abernathy Street, historic brownstone. We're auctioning the non-performing note secured by the property. Opening bid $300,000. Bennett's hand shot up. "300? A man in a gray suit 2 rows back raised his paddle. "325? Bennett whipped around to glare. "350? He was shaking, terrified, but his hatred for me and Mom was fuel. He'd rather burn every cent than let us live in peace. "375, the gray suit said calmly. Bennett hesitated. I knew his limit. 400,000 was everything. Go over that he'd be penniless. 400,000, Bennett screamed, voice cracking. The room went silent, too high for bargain hunters. "Going once at 400,000, the auctioneer chanted. "Going twice." Bennett leaned back, crossing his arms, smirking. He thought he'd won. 450,000, a voice called from the back corner. Harrison Webb stood casually against the wall, holding paddle number 33. Bennett spun around. "Who are you?" "Order." The auctioneer banged his gavel. "Bid is 450. Do I hear 475? Bennett looked at his check, looked at Harrison. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He didn't have the money. "Going once. Going twice. Sold to bidder 33, representing Phoenix Capital Trust." The gavel cracked like a gunshot. Bennett kicked his chair, storming toward the exit. He had to pass Harrison. "Congratulations," Bennett spat. "You bought a money pit. At least Marina and my mother will be on the street just like me." "Actually," I said, stepping out from behind a pillar and removing my sunglasses, "we're not planning to evict anyone." Bennett froze, turned slowly. Your Phoenix Capital." I walked to the table and signed the purchase agreement. Phoenix, the mythical bird that rises from ashes, seemed appropriate given that you tried to burn our lives to the ground. "You can't afford this. You don't have $500,000 cash." "I didn't use my cash," I said. "I used leverage. I used evidence of Kyle's fraud to negotiate with William Brennan Sr." Bennett went pale. "Kyle's father. He financed this purchase to keep his family name out of the press. So technically, Bennett, your husband's father, just bought Mom's house back for us." I stepped closer. "You paid for this. Your greed and Kyle's stupidity bought Mom her house back." Bennett looked like he'd been punched. He hadn't just lost. He'd handed me the ultimate victory. "So, you own the debt," he whispered. "I own the debt. I own the mortgage. And effective immediately, I'm the landlord." I looked at the security guard. "This man is trespassing. Please escort him out." Bennett started screaming as they took his arm. "It's not fair. That's my inheritance." I watched them drag him away, kicking and yelling like a toddler. Harrison handed me the deed. "It's done." Just a legal document, but it felt heavier than gold. It was the shield that would protect Mom for the rest of her life. "Let's go home, Harrison," I said. "Mom's making peach cobbler." Then, that evening, Starlight Motel, I sat in my rental car across from the dingy motel south of the city, watching Kyle through binoculars. He paced outside room 12, chain-smoking, checking his watch obsessively. A duffel bag sat by his feet, the cash he'd grabbed before fleeing the house. He was waiting for his Uber to the airport. He'd never make that flight. A yellow taxi pulled into the lot, kicking up dust. Kyle grabbed his bag and sprinted toward it. But before he could open the door, another car screeched in a rideshare sedan. Bennett jumped out, looking wild. "Kyle, you were leaving me?" Kyle froze, still holding the duffel. "Go home, Bennett." Kyle shoved him away. "I don't have time for this." "You have my money." Bennett grabbed at the bag. "That's the equity from the house. That's my half." Kyle shoved him hard. Bennett fell to the pavement. "It's my money," Kyle spat. "I earned it dealing with your crazy family for 10 years. You're broke, Bennett. No house, no credit. Why would I take you?" Bennett looked up at him, eyes wide with shock. "But I did everything you said. I betrayed my own mother for you." "And look where that got us," Kyle sneered. "You couldn't even keep the old woman sedated. Goodbye, Bennett." He threw the bag into the taxi. Sirens wailed. 3 black SUVs swarmed the parking lot, blocking exits. FBI agents poured out, weapons drawn. "Federal agents, hands in the air. Step away from the vehicle." Kyle froze, color draining from his face. The taxi driver threw his hands up, terrified. Bennett stayed on the ground, staring. They slammed Kyle against the taxi, patting him down roughly. One agent opened the duffel stacks of cash and rubber bands, plus a manila envelope. The agent opened it, pulled out 2 plane tickets. "One way to Phoenix, Arizona," the agent read. "And I see a companion ticket." He paused. "Issued to Jessica Hartley with an infant lap ticket for Brennan Jr." The silence was crushing. Bennett scrambled to his feet. "Phoenix Jessica, who's Jessica?" The agent checked his file. "His fiancée, ma'am. They have a 2-year-old son. He's been paying for their condo in Scottsdale with funds embezzled from your mother's estate." Bennett launched himself at Kyle. Agents held him back. "You have another family," Bennett wailed. "I gave up everything for you." Kyle closed his eyes, refusing to look. The agent cuffed Kyle. "Kyle Brennan, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and RICO charges." Then he turned to Bennett. "Bennett Foster, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and identity theft." "No, wait." Bennett pulled back. "I didn't know about Jessica. I'm a victim here. He tricked me." "Your signature is on the loan applications, Mr. Foster. Your signature is on the falsified medical documents. According to evidence provided by your sister, you were a willing participant." The click of handcuffs. Bennett looked across the parking lot. For a second, his eyes locked on my tinted windows. He couldn't see me, but he knew I was there. He didn't scream this time, just hung his head in defeat. They put them in separate cars. Bennett looked small in the back seat, all the arrogance gone. Just a broken man who'd lost everything chasing fool's gold. I started my engine and drove away from the flashing lights. 3 weeks later, Fulton County Superior Court. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I'd sat in the gallery watching the prosecution dismantle my brother's life. Kyle sat at one defense table looking gaunt. Bennett sat at another wearing a modest cardigan, the innocent victim costume. But I was the prosecution's final witness. "Ms. Foster," the prosecutor said, "you're a cybersecurity specialist and digital forensics expert." "Yes." "The defense claims Bennett was manipulated by Kyle starting in 2022. Can you speak to that?" I connected my laptop to the courtroom screen. A timeline appeared, financial records going back a decade. "Defense claims Bennett was coerced, but these bank records tell a different story." I pointed to red bars on the left side. "These represent withdrawals from my mother's retirement account. They began 5 years ago, 2019. The jury leaned forward. Bennett went pale. 5 years ago, Bennett and Kyle weren't married. They hadn't even met. I pulled up check images. These checks were written from Estelle Foster's account to BF Consulting Bennett Foster. The signatures are forged. We know this because on these dates my mother was visiting me in London. Bennett was the only one with checkbook access. I let that sink in. Bennett Foster stole from our mother for 5 years before Kyle entered the picture. He didn't corrupt Bennett. Bennett recruited Kyle into an ongoing criminal enterprise. The courtroom erupted. The victim narrative collapsed instantly. Bennett stood up screaming, "Kyle made everything worse. I was just trying to survive. She's always been Mom's favorite. I deserved that money." "Mr. Foster, sit down," the judge ordered. But the truth was out, not manipulation, pure resentment. Heck. The jury deliberated 4 hours. We find the defendant Kyle Brennan guilty on all counts. We find the defendant Bennett Foster guilty on all counts. The judge adjusted his glasses. Kyle Brennan, you preyed on the vulnerable. I sentence you to 18 years in federal prison. Kyle screamed, slamming the table. Marshals moved in. Bennett Foster, you betrayed the most sacred trust between child and parent. I sentence you to 12 years. Bennett went limp. As they led him away, he turned his head searching for Mom. But Mom had already left the courtroom, so he looked at me. Empty. Hollow. Not hatred. Just nothing. 9 months later. Federal Prison, Tallahassee. Mom decided to visit Bennett. Alone. I waited in the car while she went inside. When she came out an hour later, her eyes were red but dry. What did he say? I asked as she got in. He said he doesn't know if he would have felt guilty if I'd died. Mom stared straight ahead. But he's grateful he doesn't have to find out. Did you forgive him? Yes. Not because he deserves it, because I need to for my own peace. She turned to me. But forgiveness doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean relationship. It means I'm releasing the hatred so it doesn't poison me. We drove in silence. Will you visit again? I finally asked. I don't know. 1 year after trial, Christmas Eve. Snow dusted the railing of the Abernathy Street brownstone. Inside, a 12-foot tree glowed with lights and ornaments spanning 3 generations. Mom sat in her armchair directing placement. A little to the left, Marina. Perfect. I stepped down from the ladder, admiring our work. The doorbell rang. Harrison entered with a leather portfolio. The Celine Foster Irrevocable Trust is complete, he said. The house is protected forever. No one can touch it. He handed me one more thing, a plain white envelope. This came from the prison, forwarded to my office. From Bennett, I opened it. Short, unlined paper. Marina, the food here is inedible. I need money for commissary. I know you sold my jewelry. Send me $500. It's the least you can do. B. Even now, even after everything. Still demanding, still believing he was owed something. I walked to the fireplace, logs crackling. Is it important? Mom asked. No, Mom, just junk mail. I tossed it into the fire, watched the paper curl and blacken, watched the words turn to ash. I sat on the rug beside Mom's chair. She stroked my hair like when I was little. Later decorating the tree, I found an old ornament, Baby's First Christmas, Bennett, hand-painted by Mom. Should we put this up? I asked. Mom took it, studying it for a long time. Yes, put it up. Her voice was soft. He was my baby once, before everything. That part was real. We can hold both truths. He was loved and he became terrible. I placed it on the tree, toward the back, present but not prominent, acknowledged but not celebrated. We sat on the couch, fire crackling, tea steaming, snow falling outside, silent but companionable. Do you think we'll ever be okay again? Mom asked. I think we're okay now, just different okay. Different okay is harder than I thought. Yeah, but it's real, and that matters. Outside, snow covered the street in white. Inside, 2 women breathed, living, scarred, together. Mom picked up an ornament, a small phoenix made of red glass. She'd bought it last month. For us, she'd said when she showed it to me, for rising. She hung it on the tree, front and center, not where we'd been, but where we were going. I raised my tea. To us, Mom. She clinked her cup against mine. To us, Marina, and to the phoenix. The crystal rang out clear and pure. For the first time in a long time, my life wasn't just beginning. It was continuing, imperfect, complicated, real, and that was enough. Epilogue. 2 years later. The Celine Foster Music Scholarship awarded its 5th recipient today, a 17-year-old girl whose father embezzled her college fund. Marina Foster spoke at the ceremony about using pain to fuel purpose, not poison. Celine Foster played piano. Chopin, her hands steady and strong. Bennett Foster's letters still arrive every few months. Celine keeps them in a box labeled unfinished. She hasn't written back. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. Kyle Brennan's appeals were denied. His son is 4 now, doesn't know his father. The brownstone stands at 422 Abernathy Street. 3 generations. 4 now when Marina's niece visits Bennett's daughter from before Kyle, who Marina reconnected with last year. Family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by who shows up, who stays, who chooses you when they could choose easier. Marina learned that the hard way, but she learned. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Learn, rise, continue. Like the phoenix. Always like the phoenix.